for women and those who are victims of all kinds of violence. This is his legacy to this institution. And I hope that thanks to the work of all parliamentarians, this bill will see the light of day very soon. And I hope that it will have, and I believe it will have, a positive impact so that more people are present in a very difficult legal system. Despite our divergence of opinions on many subjects, senators and myself agree on this, and it's a priority for the Bloc Québécois to protect criminal acts. And so I'm very happy to take the floor today on the matter. In Quebec and in Canada, criminal law has a duty to punish crimes and protect the public. With feminicides and domestic violence on the rise, it is important to strengthen mechanisms to ensure the protection of victims, their children, and their loved ones. This means amending the criminal code, and Bill S205 is a step in the right direction. It wants victims to be more involved in the judicial process by asking judges to consult them before any conditional release. The criminal code sets out conditions under which it would be justified to detain an accused person pending trial. 515.10 states, for the purposes of this section, the detention of an accused in custody is justified only in one of the following cases. A, his or her detention is necessary to ensure his presence in court so that he or she may be dealt with according to the law. B, detention is necessary for the protection or safety of the public, including victims and witnesses of the offence and persons under the age of 18, having regard to all the circumstances, including any substantial likelihood that the accused, if released, will commit a criminal offence or interfere with the administration of justice. C, their detention is necessary in order not to undermine public confidence in the administration of justice, having regard to all these circumstances, including the following: the fact that the charge appears to be well-founded, the seriousness of the offence, the circumstances surrounding its commission, including the use of a firearm, the fact that the accused, if convicted, is liable to a long term of imprisonment, or in the case of an offence involving a firearm, a minimum sentence of at least 3 years. The decision whether or not to detain a person pending trial depends on a number of factors specific to each situation. When it is in the public interest to detain an accused person, it is important to remember that the accused is deprived of their fundamental rights. These include the presumption of innocence and the right to life, freedom, and security. Allowing the victim to be more involved in the judicial process that concerns him or her is a laudable step forward that we can unreservedly support. Victims do not have to go through an obstacle course to obtain justice. The bill will help to reduce the obstacles that victims may face and which may dissuade them from taking the courageous step of filing a complaint against their attacker. The Bloc Québécois, of course, has always stood up for victims of crime. As I said earlier, our thoughts are with women and victims of domestic violence. Every victim is one too many. Quebec is one of the most advanced avant-garde nations in protecting victims of family and domestic violence. The Quebec Ministry for Public Safety has deployed a Quebec-wide project for electronic monitoring devices to prevent feminicides and protect victims of domestic violence or sexual exploitation. This protective measure was first offered in the Quebec City region in May 2022. It was then deployed throughout Quebec. In the Gaspésie, Maclean Islands, and northern Quebec received this service in September 2023. They are used to prevent offenders from approaching their victims, simple as. The system consists of two linked geolocation devices, one device permanently attached to the ankle of the accused or offender, and a mobile application installed on a cell phone in the hands of the person to be protected. If the offender crosses the predetermined prohibition zones around the victim, a signal will be transmitted to a central monitoring station which can see on a screen the location of each of the two people. An agent will ask the EMD wearer to turn back. If the wearer refuses or continues to approach, the officer will request police intervention. Sometimes the police are deployed immediately without waiting for the offender's reaction. The idea of this measure is to ensure the victim's peace of mind and safety. The electronic bracelet, or EMD, can be imposed on offenders sentenced to serve time in the community, those released pending trial or on parole, or those who have conditions to meet upon release from prison. In all cases, the victim must give his or her consent before the electronic bracelet can be fitted. Quebec was a pioneer in introducing this protection system and to date is the only Canadian province to use it. Isabelle Mayou, Director General of Security at Quebec Correctional Services at the Correctional Services Directorate, stated, "When I have the opportunity to speak to a victim who tells me that they've regained peace of mind, that they've started sleeping again at night, that is for me a success factor. And as for offenders, there's a certain deterrence to this when they realize that we are ready to follow them up." End of quote. She hopes that if the program is well known, a greater number of women will be tempted to take part if they ever need to. I hope that the rest of Canada will follow Quebec's example. It is time to come full circle and allow released prisoners to be subject to the same restrictions as those proposed in S205. Measures could have a very positive impact on our communities. Returning to these proposed legislative amendments, this is an added value for victims, of course. Why? Because the justice system needs to be more efficient and transparent. We need to make the judicial process easier for victims and families. When a decision is made, for example, with regards to releasing an aggressor. This bill could also strengthen the public's trust in the justice system. This so that no one who has been a victim of crime will hesitate to report it to the police. We know that too often victims do not report to the police, and statistics on that matter are worrying. That is why these legislative measures are very important. Between 2009 and 2019, there was a 7.5% increase in feminicide and domestic violence cases.
We saw a peak in 2021. 18,571 women were victims in Quebec. That's 1,788 more than in 2020. So I think as a parliamentary body, we have a responsibility to help reverse this worrying trend. So I'll just come back to the three main components of the bill. I mentioned the obligation to consult the victim prior to a release order with conditions. Also, the introduction of the notion of domestic violence, on the basis of which a victim may request that the accused enter into reconnaissance to keep the peace. And three, a preponderance of the victim's version of events, which might influence the choice of conditions to which the accused will be subject under that commitment. So the bill has worked the bloc has worked to improve this bill, and we did that at committee. The majority of the amendments made to the bill, we supported them. They generally strengthen the bill by adding additional support to victims. There was only one amendment that we were against, which reduced the maximum time for good behavior from 2 years to 12 months. We know that there are people who can recommit violence years later, so it's important to be vigilant concerning those who have a violent past. And for the rest, we continue to support this bill, which I think will have a positive impact to ensure the safety of people in our communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Debate with the honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honour to rise in support of this bill today, Bill 2S205, that was first introduced by Senator Boissonnault in 2021. I want to first acknowledge his work and hard efforts putting this bill forward, and also his courage in regards to sharing his story about how gender-based violence impacted his own family. I think with that in mind, I think this became, a critical bill for him to ensure is passed through the House. And in general, this bill sets out to protect survivors of intimate partner violence through various amendments to the criminal code. These include ensuring judges consult the accused intimate partner about their safety and security needs, allowing judges to consider the use of an electronic monitor for interim release, and establishing a new type of recognizance order peace bond for survivors of intimate partner violence, which, if granted, would allow the judge to impose conditions, including electronic monitoring and the treatment or domestic violence counseling program. Given that this bill is of great importance, especially because we know that rates of gender-based violence has increased since the pandemic, I can affirm to you that the committee worked very hard to ensure that this bill was reviewed promptly, to ensure it could be passed into law. So I'm very excited to be here for the debate today to keep this bill moving along. But we also worked in the committee to make necessary amendments to address concerns expressed by the study witnesses. So I think it's important while discussing the bill to emphasize that intimate partner violence is a national crisis. We certainly know, as I indicated, that rates of violence within the home have increased since the pandemic. We also see a connection between intimate partner violence and, a mental health crisis that we're currently witnessing in Canada. In fact, every 6 days, a woman in Canada is killed by her intimate partner. And some Canadian cities, including Ottawa, Toronto, and Kitchener, have gone so far as to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic, given its severity. So we know that we need to address this crisis of violence. We know that it is critical that we put in place laws to ensure the safety of those that are experiencing violence. We know that rates of intimate partner violence, in fact, have been on the rise in recent years, especially, as I said, since COVID-19 pandemic. Between 2014 and 2022, intimate partner rates increased by an alarming 20%. Intimate partner violence overwhelmingly impacts women, and in particular, young women. 44% of women, or 6.2 million women aged 15 and older, have reported some kind of abuse in their intimate partner relationship. And we often think about intimate partner violence in terms of those that are cohabiting together. But even if you look at the rates of intimate partner violence and the impact on youth, the rates are alarming. Women's similarity were overrepresented in intimate partner homicides, which make up nearly 1/5 of all solved homicides in Canada. Intimate